for the people. You're fighting for all kinds of.
No. It's the other way around, man. It's the other way around. Everyone's going to be mad that I won, but they will absolutely admit if push comes to shove, I won. It would be like those debates when you were like, Alan Keyes won the arguments, but everybody came away liking Barack Obama. You know, you're Obama and I'm Alan Keyes in this. I don't like that analogy either. I don't like either of those choices.
Hey man, speaking of you making people mad, there's a quote you wrote that I loved. Well, you didn't write a quote. You wrote a long article about it.
I took that and I turned it into a quote.
I took your whole article, turned it into a quote, a part that I loved. And it was amazing.
What was it? Because I love it when you quote me on the air. It's just great. Just good for my ego. My head can't fit in this camera.
Man, I'm pulling up the Facebook quote right now, but it was amazing because it came from all these conversations we were having about the whole business of selling your soul and how there are a lot of people who are just starting off their careers and they're really afraid of selling their soul. And they're like, oh man, I don't know if I want to, work at this company because I don't want to sell my soul, or I don't know if I want to do something that I don't exactly love because I don't want to sell my soul. And so you wrote this very excellent post that we'll share wherever we promote this and so forth. But I boiled it down. And here's the little sentence version that I wrote that everybody got really upset about. All right. I'm scrolling down Facebook to get this up. We're almost there.
This is great live podcast material.
I just realized that I posted
through his Facebook notifications.
Say what?
TK's Facebook notifications. That sounds like my version of hell,
Hey, how many Facebook notifications you get a day?
I don't know. I don't check it.
Yeah, you don't like being on Facebook.
Mm-mm.
I forgot about that. All right, so here we go. You wrote, young people worry a lot about selling their soul, taking a job that compromises their true self. Reality is no one is trying to buy your soul when you start your career. It's not yet valuable enough to sell if you want it to. Now, I think the way everybody heard that was they heard it as if what was being said was, it's impossible to ever find yourself in a situation where you are offered the opportunity to sell your soul. Or they heard it as there's no one out there that will ever try to exploit you or take advantage of you. You were saying something entirely different. You were saying until you've learned how to create opportunities in the first place, you don't even have the luxury of worrying about that. Am I understanding you right?
Yeah, like this imagined scenario where it's like, well, here's all this success and fortune and fame and whatever, but I'd have to sell my soul. I am so worried. I got to protect myself from that. That is like not a legitimate threat to anybody until almost ever, until they have achieved an ability to create a lot of value, until they're worth trying to buy. Someone is like, your soul isn't very valuable to me if you're just some rando. But if you have a lot of skill and ability and talent, the more you ratchet up, the harder it gets to not sell your soul, because the more valuable it becomes and the higher the stakes get. The more people are like, hey, TK, you're on podcasts, you do a lot of speaking, you're a really good communicator. I would love to make your dreams come true if you would only use that known value in your communication ability to communicate what I want you to. And that thing just so happens to absolutely violate the core of your being. Now, I find that really hard to imagine because you don't seem to find anything immoral of any, you find a way to turn everything into some wonderful, positive thing. So I can't even imagine what that would look like, you selling your soul. But it's not until you have that established value, until you're worth trying to pursue. And so I think people use this as this reason to not do stuff, to not pursue things, to not try things. It's like, well, if I do that, it might end up later that I'm selling my soul. But it's like, well, how do you know? If I take that job at a coffee shop, it's like, what about that is selling your soul? I don't know, but I can envision myself getting stuck there later. And it's like, well, you're doing nothing now. You're stuck now, right? Your soul is completely worthless right now. I don't mean that in a cosmic sense. I mean, in a opportunities sense, in a market sense, you're not creating value, adding value to yourself. So that's not the first thing to worry about. Once you start confronting that as a real thing, Well, absolutely. At every step of the way, there'll be little opportunities to compromise here and there. But early on, you won't even really know what selling your soul means because you won't even have a really clearly defined idea. Like for me today, to go into politics would absolutely be selling my soul. I didn't know that. It's not because I'm a different person. I mean, maybe somewhat, but it's because I didn't know that early in my career. I thought politics was a viable method to pursue things. And the more I knew about it, the more I realized I can't go this direction. And once I had that knowledge and I had the skill that it was even a real option, I could run for office if I wanted to, and I could potentially win. Now that it's a real option, because I'm able to do it, and that I know enough to know that it would mean selling my soul, now I'm confronted with an actual dilemma, and I need to make the choice not to do the thing that is selling my soul on my own terms. But before then, I didn't know that. It's like, you don't have the skill or the information. So don't worry about that when you're getting started.
Yeah. So my analogy for this is like, if I have a friend that says, man, I'm just really worried that one day I'm going to marry the wrong person and I'm going to just be in a terrible message and it's going to end in a bitter divorce. I would say, okay, that's a fair concern, right? I mean, that happens to a lot of people. So you're not crazy if you have that fear, but if you've never been on a date,
tried to date you ever?
yes. If you're like 19, you've never been on a date, you've never asked anyone out. Okay, that's still a fair concern, but you're a long way from having that problem to worry about. Get out there and meet people first. Get some experience first. Go out on a first date first and try to do something at all before you worry too much about doing it wrong. This is basically a rehashing of the age-old problem of being afraid of getting it wrong or making a mistake or failing, right? There are people who get stuck in analysis paralysis. They say, I don't want to do it wrong, so I'm not going to do it at all. I don't want to fall on my face and fail, so I'm not going to get started until I can have a guarantee that everything is going to work out. And you just have to start, and you have to know that you're going to get some things wrong, that it's going to be imperfect, that there's going to be a little trial and error, but you get some experience under your belt, get some reps in, and then you can develop crystal clear ideas of what it does and does not mean for you personally to be a sellout. I think we value too much getting the right answer over acquiring the kind of wisdom that comes through experience.
Yeah. Touch some more hot stoves and learn what you don't want to do. No, I mean, I think we're really good at telling stories to ourselves too, that we believe, and we don't realize that the stories are covering up a deeper motivation that we would be ashamed of if we were aware of it. And so a lot of introspection has to take place. So I think a lot of that, like fear of selling my soul, it's some layers of the status game. If you start to compare yourself to others and you see somebody who's your age, who has a massive YouTube following and they're making a bunch of money and they're famous, and you would like to have that, but you don't, it's very easy to say, I am really worried about selling my soul, as a way to make yourself feel like that person actually, even though they look better than me by my own standards, or I'm jealous of them, they're worse than me because by implication, they've sold their soul. And the fact that I'm unwilling to do that, that's the reason why I haven't achieved what they've achieved. And I think that's often, it's really easy to say like, well, if I were willing to sell my soul, and the hard reality is that's not true. It's not true. It's not, if you just went and sold your soul, you'd instantly have 1 million followers on YouTube. Like, whatever else is involved, it takes a lot of work, and you won't even get the chance to sell your soul until you get 100,000, right? And just being honest about that. And then just the solution isn't to tell yourself stories and lies so you don't feel bad when you compare yourself to others. The solution is to stop comparing yourself to others. Don't play the status game at all. Then you don't need all these layers of false narrative to justify that you aren't the same as somebody else.
Yeah, you see that a lot in the entertainment industry, where people are aiming for careers as models, as actors or musicians. There are always people that seem to get the shortcut route to success. And it's taken you a long time. And you say, oh yeah, well, if I didn't have any morals and if I were willing to play any role, I'd be a superstar too.
Hey, if I were willing to go on Are You Smarter Than a Fifth Grader and make a fool out of myself, I would be getting an Oscar by now. So I don't know why some people waste these opportunities.
You know what? This all just comes back to my dad, who told me one time that if he had my gifts, he would have been way more successful than me. Just everything I say is just a reaction to that.
Hey, man. So we just kind of started right in with a topic. Here we are, season finale of Office Hours. We're doing it live on opposite coasts, and it feels very weird for me to be the one on the West Coast while you're on the East Coast.
I know, man. It's crazy.
I don't know. Should we like have some sort of honorifics and start this thing off or something? Hello to everybody who's tuning in live from Puerto Rico, Texas, wherever else.
Yeah, cheers, everybody. You know, Isaac and I have been doing a lot of promoting this and talking it up. And one question we definitely want to get answered tonight. We want to answer all of your questions, but we want to get an answer from you. Who is the GOAT? Who is the greatest of all time, Isaac or TK? When it comes to Office Hours, who is the true GOAT of Office Hours? We want you to get that vote in and let us know because Isaac's been talking a lot of trash, talking about how, you know, he's the people's champ and all this kind of stuff.
No, you're the people's champ. I'm just the champ. I don't need to lobby for votes. I don't care about any of that. I just know. I know, you know, it's like Charles Barkley versus Michael Jordan. Like, I just know, you know.
Hey, so we've got some questions coming in. The questions come in on the chat. Everyone who's here, make sure you type them in on the chat and we'll get to them. Lilia from Puerto Rico has a question here. Let me read this. It says, "Hi, I'm a big fan of the show. Thank you for the advice and tips you always provide and for the entertainment too. My question is there some basic skills or principal skills to learn for someone who doesn't know what to do career-wise? If you need background, I work an entry-level job at a bank. I have a bachelor's in humanities, and I have no idea what to do career-wise." Thank you. Thanks for that question, Lilia.
Do you want me to take it first?
Yeah, you got it, man.
All right. The number one skill you should work on is curiosity. You work at a bank and it's an entry-level job and it's paying the bills, but it sounds like this isn't like a career for you. It's just, I got a job to pay the bills, but I don't really know like where I want to go. You don't need to pick what you want to be when you grow up or in 10 years or 20 years. That's going to change. You just want to look for what's a great next step that actually has some potential to get me closer to make progress in my career. You got a bachelor's in humanities. You probably know by now that doesn't really do anything to help you figure out career-wise where you want to go, what you want to do, or really know sort of your value on the market. Get curious about everything, especially about different companies and different industries. What's going on in the world? What's happening in technology? What's happening in the world of marketing? What are they talking about? What are the new companies there? What's happening in the physical, production of goods? What are the newest shoe companies up to? Are there different business models there? What are they doing? Just get curious and start to follow things. And if you already have a natural interest in any particular thing, learn about every single company in that thing. If you like hiking outdoors, go start reading about who are the companies that make trail guides? Who are the companies that make hiking boots? Who are the companies that do vacation bookings and rental cars for outback retreats? And just start learning as much as you can. Follow YouTube channels, follow people on Twitter, get into podcasts around certain industries and ideas, and start to understand what's happening out there in the broader world, in the marketplace. And then at the same time, so you're sort of discovering what's out there in the market, discovering your own abilities and interests. What are the types of things that you like to do and that you do kind of better than a lot of people, even at your current job? Are you really good talking face-to-face with customers? Are you really detail-oriented and you don't make any mistakes and you get everything right? Is your desk area really neat and clean? Are you really good at writing? Are you somebody who's more numbers-minded, right? Whatever, try to think about like, what's something that I do better than most people around me that I don't hate doing? Is there some things I can learn and develop there? Can I go and learn? Are there some software tools that help people do that? Are there places where that's valued? And just really start to explore, try things, set up a website, start a blog, start blogging every day, start a podcast around your interests, start learning out loud, asking a lot of questions, consuming a lot of content about the world. Do that for 6 months and then come back and say, okay, now I kind of think I have a couple areas of interest, and now I'm going to target a few specific companies, and I'm going to see what's the most entry-level role they have that I think I might be able to show them something that would give me a chance. And if I got my foot in the door there and worked there for a year or two, I bet I would learn a lot more about what I want to do after that.
Man, that's fantastic. So I remember I worked as a server at a restaurant called Gulfstream in LA, and lots of actors, entertainers would come in the restaurant. And I think I may have shared this with you on a previous episode of Office Hours, but I served John Voight, who was the Academy Award winning actor, father of Angelina Jolie. And I asked him, I said, what advice would you give to someone who wants to achieve a competitive edge? And he said, that. Keep doing that. What you're doing now, keep doing that. Whenever you interact with successful people, people that you admire, ask them those kinds of questions and you'll get there. And my advice is similar to that for you. Isaac talked about learn about your curiosity. Well, one way to do that is to recognize where you already are curious. And this question is a great example of that. You're curious about learning more information related to what to do when you don't know what to do. Now, you framed it philosophically by saying, hey, any advice for a person who doesn't know what to do with their lives? But I want to challenge you to frame it biographically. And you can learn so many cool things from other people. What are you laughing at, man?
You framed it philosophically. Let's flip that biographically.
I want you to go from the philosophical to the biographical. One of the best pieces of advice I received from Peter Daniels, he said, in the course of your lifetime, read 1,000 biographies, because in doing so, you will build a vast vocabulary of overcoming incredible odds. Other people's story can help you contextualize your own story. So I would say, look at all the people around you at the bank. You have a ton of people with more experience than you, different experience than you. They've got all kinds of cool stories. Learn how to learn from those people. Go up to them, offer them coffee, or sitting around at lunch break, say something like, hey, have you ever had a moment in your life where you didn't know what to do next? Most of them are going to say, yeah, and say, what did you do? How did you react and respond to that moment? And they're going to tell you some interesting story about their lives. And it's going to give you a piece of the puzzle. And it's going to make you an interesting person in the process. So what's a valuable skill to learn? Learn how to learn from the people around you by translating your own questions into opportunities to hear their own story.
I don't know if your role at the bank involves interacting with customers like as a teller, but if it does, that's a great opportunity there to ask people, hey, what do you do for a living? Tell me about your industry. I don't know anything about it. Tell me about the company you work for. Is it cool? I always thought it would be really amazing if you were really interested in a particular type of career, but you didn't really know, to pick a city where that's a really big thing and just be an Uber driver for like 6 months. And every time someone gets in the car, be like, what do you do? What company do you work for? Tell me about it. What's it like? What are the things that happen in that industry? What's the newest, latest, and greatest? 6 months of that? Like, imagine come being an Uber driver in the San Francisco Bay Area and you want to know about startups and you just start asking everybody who gets in the car. You're going to learn so much. You're probably going to have all kinds of amazing people get in and out of that car and you will learn a ton. So just taking that curiosity and applying it openly.
Absolutely. All right. This one comes from Dave. Would love for the guys to give me some feedback on the following question. Do more formal apprenticeships with a master-student relationship have any benefits over diving into a new topic and teaching yourself with mentors to ask for advice if needed? I've done both, but I'm definitely learning more and having more fun with the latter method. Is there anything else I should consider? Am I missing out on something?
TK, what is it like to apprentice under a master like me? I mean,
man, it's a terrible experience. You want to extricate yourself from those kind of relationships as quickly as possible.
Hey, check it out. Okay, go ahead, TK. You start on this one.
Yeah, I'm going to split the horns of that dilemma and say both have their pros and cons, and you just spelled them out. But ultimately, I don't think you should approach this as, well, which one is the right way? Am I doing it the wrong way? The right way is the one that you enjoy the most, because if you enjoy that path, you're going to pay attention to the lessons that you learn from that path. You don't need a mentor until you want a mentor. There is nothing worse than having someone speak into your life before you are interested in what they have to say. If you're at a point where you just want to be alone and you want to read a bunch of books or watch a bunch of YouTube videos and experiment and do things on your own, that's a part of the learning process. And it's very important. There is such a thing as receiving instructions or receiving advice too early in the learning process. Sometimes you need the room to tinker. So I think both of these approaches are very valuable, and depending on the temperament of the person, they can work for you. But I would say get rid of the FOMO and take the approach that seems to be working for you. And the best way to measure that is, hey, am I getting what I want? Am I having fun? Am I enjoying this?
Yeah, I would say most of the time, a more open-ended, self-driven discovery and you're bouncing ideas off of people and things like that is preferable, because most of the time, most of us don't have an incredibly well-specified idea of exactly what we want to do. But if you do, that's where I think maybe a more formal apprenticeship thing could be at its highest value, where if you know you see someone and you say, I want to do exactly what you are doing. Show me how you do what you do. Sometimes I fantasize about if I did something else, I would love to write movie scores, and I would just go find Hans Zimmer and I'd be like, let me just follow you for a year and just watch everything that you do. Because I want to write movie scores just like you. I don't actually want to do that enough to do it. But if you have something really specific and you know you want that and you see somebody doing it in the way that you would want to do it, at least to start with, that's where maybe trying something more formal would make sense. But if it's more open-ended, I tend to think you want to have a little bit more freedom.
All right, Joey, how do you balance positive feedback with a team that is underperforming? My SDR team had one of the worst quarters they have ever had during the second quarter of this year. They have gotten mostly negative feedback about their performance from the management team, rightly so, since they have greatly underperformed. However, it's become clear to me that no matter how much negative feedback they get and instructions on how to do better, they continue to underperform. They are discouraged, and it seems any good feedback would at least help boost morale. My question is, how do I, in more of a leadership role, encourage and give positive feedback, even if the team hasn't done anything to elicit positive feedback? Or alternatively, what kind of feedback do you give a team that is failing at what they're built to be doing?
So I actually don't really like the idea of positive feedback or negative feedback. I think the very best thing is just absolutely realistic feedback. Just confront the team with the reality of the situation without bringing any doom and gloom or any optimistic hype emotion or trying to get all hyped up for the moment. Just being like, all right, guys, here's the reality. We all know it, but let's just get it out in front and get it out in the open. We have to hit the following quota for the next 3 months. And don't even talk about the past. Like, okay, whatever. That's, historically we've been at this quota. We got to hit this quota. So that means for the next 3 months, if we don't do X amount every single day, then this just isn't going to work out. It's okay if it doesn't work out. Like if you guys find that anyone here, this just isn't the right fit for you, this isn't the right job for you, that's an okay answer. No judgment here, but this is the reality of what's required from this role. So let's go all in the trenches together, and let's fight and see if we can hit this month and then repeat it 2 more months in a row. And if not, that's all right. We'll help you find your next thing, but that's what the role demands. And just be very real about it. Now, it is possible, especially if it's a newer company with a newer role, that if you have never seen anyone hit those numbers before, that there's something wrong with the model and the assumptions. Maybe you're assuming that these numbers are possible, and they might not be for other reasons. And that may not be the fault of those employees, but it still probably means you've got to stop using this model. You got to get to the end of that period and say, it didn't happen. Maybe we have some deeper assumptions that need to be questioned. And you may or may not be in the role to do that. But if there is a track record of, look, we've had SDRs that hit these before, this current batch isn't, there's no reason to be like, come on, guys, be optimistic. Just be like, hey, let's be realistic. This is what we got to hit. If we don't hit it, it's not the worst thing in the world. It's not like the role is the ideal role for everybody. Let's go at it. Let's see what we can do. And if we don't, we don't.
Yeah, man, I don't have a whole lot to add to that, but here are 2 questions I would give to you if you're in a position where you have to give, feedback. The first question is, what's the reality, however harsh, of what needs to be done, along with the consequences of not doing it? The second question is, what are we already doing that's worth building on? And I would contend that there are always answers to both of those questions. It's kind of like in everyday life. There is no situation so great that you can't find something about it that needs to be improved. And there is no situation so bad that you can't find something about it that's worth building on. Now, I don't believe in the forced compliment sandwich where all you have is something negative to say. And so you're just going to manufacture some positive compliment. Well, you do have a nice color shirt on, but
you look really nice today. You bombed your sales numbers. I love the way that you make your sandwiches at lunch.
Yeah, that's never going to work, right? That's going to sound fake and forced, but there's always something that's worth building on. And oftentimes you can frame constructive criticism in those terms, right? So you're making the calls. And I like the fact that you're making the calls. You're generating great leads. Those are 2 things that are worth building on. However, here is the missing piece that we absolutely have to zoom in on and do more of. Or you've already mastered those things. You're absolutely crushing it on that. You're doing a fantastic job at that. Don't spend any more time on that because the efforts are disproportionate, right? We need more time on this and less time on the things that you're good at. Sometimes when you just acknowledge the things that are being done well, just that tiny little bit of validation can make people open up and feel seen and be more receptive to the critical things that you have to say. But it's got to be genuine.
That's a great answer. I love that. And I totally would have missed that because that's one thing I'm not good at managing people, and at least people who need to be managed. And that's one of the reasons. We were just talking about this the other day. If I have that situation, my typical approach is like, watch the Glenn Ross always be closing speech and then just get it right or get out of here. And TK was talking about Cameron Sorsby, who we work with, who's got this really great ability, instead of just saying, no, that's not working, or no, that's a bad idea, which tends to be my approach, to say, okay, let's find the one thing in there that is working. And let's start there. And the ability to say, okay, tell me about one of the sales calls that you closed. What went right about it? How did it work? Tell me about your best experience this month. What went right about that? How could you replicate that more often? Sometimes there's a lot of stuff hidden in there. That's something that does not come naturally to me, and I'm not good at it. So I'm glad you brought that up, TK.
Absolutely, man. All right. So Lilia said, in terms of her.
Notice how I said, I'm not good at it. And even though you brought it up, instead of complimenting you, I said, Cameron Sorsby is good at it, though. I didn't say you were. TK is very good at that as well.
Lilia says, for the GOAT, I will go with Isaac. Still love you, TK. Love you back, Lilia. I appreciate the honesty. Ann Butcher has a word of admonishment here. Ann says, didn't Isaac just say you were better off not comparing yourself to someone else's success? I think TK and Isaac would both be better off if they didn't focus on measuring themselves against each other.
We contain multitudes.
I got to say,
let's not play the status game. Go ahead and vote for the
Hey, but you know what? This takes it to the whole don't take it personal thing and the take everything personally. This is a great example of how the same piece of advice can help you or hurt you depending on how you contextualize it. If doing something like competing with other people makes it feel like a game and it makes it fun and it motivates you, do it. If on the other hand, comparing yourself with others and competing with them doesn't bring out the best in you, it doesn't take you to another level, it just makes you envious or just makes you bitter, then toss it out of the window, All right, Jayla.
So at some point in this podcast, I'll be like, hey, let's stop playing the comparison game. And then you'll know that I got my feelings hurt.
Yeah, I'll know that I've gone too far. All right. How can I attain that ever elusive work-life balance? At one point, I was really focused on saving for Praxis and my emergency fund. I did extra hours at my full-time job, and during my lunch breaks, I'd work on my part-time job, but I didn't have time to do much else. I realized there's a time and place for being ultra focused on a goal, but I'd like some advice on how I can do that and keep things like meaningful relationships, healthy routines, and my sanity.
Man, I think we have both touched on this in various ways over the years, but I'm not very good at answering this, or at least not with the standard framing. I don't really think about work and life as two separate things that I balance. I just don't. I'm not trying to be like cute. I sort of have this like always be making progress, making myself more valuable based on my own goals and desires, and don't do stuff that I hate. And again, doesn't mean don't do stuff that's hard. Doesn't mean don't only do things in the short term. Don't do stuff that I hate in my full, true, long-term interest. So like if I'm doing something that's fun and easy now, but it's going to end up making me do something that I really hate later, right? It's more complicated than that. And so with that in mind, that kind of helps me navigate a lot of situations. Like if I have something, an obligation, a podcast or something that's like technically for work, and I really just feel like I do not want to do that. I would rather go home and be with my family and just relax. The decision, I don't really see it as work versus life. I see it more as, where am I going to get more energy back? What's going to give me more energy back? What's going to help me add to myself more? And I just really know if I say no to that podcast and go home tonight, that's going to feel better. Other times it's going to be the other way around. I know it's going to be hard and I'll miss my family, but going to do this series of meetings on the other side of the country for a couple of days, I know that's going to give me the energy, and I'm going to wish I would have done it if I didn't do it. And so there's some other kind of decision process that doesn't put things into those work-life categories that seems to work better for me.
Yeah, I think the real challenge of having a lot of responsibilities isn't that you don't have any time, but it's you lose your ability to be frivolous or unconscious with time. You and I have talked about the concept of time billionaires before, where this usually correlates with age, but it can also correlate with a stage where you don't have a lot of external responsibilities. But basically, being a time billionaire is when you're able to spend your time in any direction without ever looking at the cost. You never have to look at the price tag. You never have to worry about how much you have left. When I was in my early 20s,
just making it rain time everywhere.
Man, better than anybody else. In my early 20s, I was a time billionaire. I would hang out all day. I would do everything I wanted. But then maybe around 11 p.m., I decide, okay, I want to read for a few hours, right? Then I read for 3 hours. Then I do my homework. It felt like I had a whole lot of time, and the world never punished me for not being well managed. I didn't have to get up early in the morning to take care of the important things or whatever it may be because I had a lot of time. But once I started to accumulate responsibilities, I had to be more judicious with my time. It's like being someone who makes just a little bit of money. Well, now you got to pay attention to price tags. Now you have to budget. And I think the same is true with time. You have enough room to hustle, to work on your goals, and have time for meaningful relationships. But what those responsibilities are forcing you to do is to get off autopilot and to be deliberate, to be strategic, to be well planned, to really think critically about your priorities and to make room for them. Now you can't just wait for a good time to hang out with your friends. You got to pull out a calendar and you got to plan it. You got to say, I'm going to make this happen. I'm not going to wait until I'm lucky. I'm not going to wait until a good time opens up. I'm going to plan, hey, 2 weeks from now, I'm going to meet up with that friend and have coffee. So my suggestion to you is take a look at your priorities and the things that you want to make sure you do outside of work. Write those things down and be deliberate about them. Make plans, think ahead of time, and don't just wait for stuff to open up to you, because now that you have all those goals, those days are over. You're no longer a time billionaire. You have to be someone who budgets your time.
Yeah, you never want to be in the feeling that things are happening to you. And if you just force yourself to be deliberate, whatever the outcome, if you're working really hard and you're tired, whatever, if you chose that for whatever period of time and you feel like you're deliberate about that versus like, I don't know, I just feel like I'm a victim of these things happening to me, that makes all the difference.
Yeah, I hear a lot of talk about morning routines, and I know there are different philosophies on that. But here's one thing I will say about what time you get up. I don't care if it's 4 a.m. or 6 a.m., but I will say whatever time the world starts demanding things of you, make sure you give yourself a good amount of time before that starts happening. That's a great way to think about what you want to do. That's a great way for you to set the energetic tone for your day. Don't wake up after the world starts making its demands, because you're always going to feel like you're behind the 8 ball and you're reacting. Get up first before the world does. I was about to say beat the world up, but given the Floyd Mayweather comparison, I don't want to sound violent. So get up before the world starts placing demands on you and set the tone.
That's hard to do on the West Coast, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
Man, you West Coasters have been suffering all this time by East Coast imperialism. All the work happens before, sun's up.
I know, man. The East Coast privilege is real.
Yeah.
All right. So shout out to Peyton, who says they're both fantastic, but Isaac's interview on Fox was what got me interested in Praxis. So I'm going to have to go with him. Peyton with the Stephen A. Smith answer.
Hey, let me be abundantly clear. Both of these gentlemen mean the most to me. However, with that having been said, there is no doubt that Isaac Morehouse mops the floor with Takoa Coleman 9 times out of 8.
But don't get me wrong. I spoke to TK Coleman on the phone the other day, and he's a wonderful man. All right, back to Lilia. So you guys talk a lot about degrees, but what about the increased pressure of doing a master's? I see that with a lot of people my age.
I got to be honest. I think that's probably the dumbest one of all.
Not the dumbest question, the dumbest pressure.
No, not question. Yeah. Thank you, TK, for making sure. TK is always the defender of our listeners. And I'm always just like running roughshod all over our wonderful listeners. I love our listeners. Yeah, I have a master's degree. So I'm not saying this as like, something that I'm not aware of. It really doesn't add any value, economic value at all. Like whatever signaling value there is to a bachelor's degree, which again, I think you can easily outcompete by creating a portfolio of work, a crash.co profile, if I may. But a master's degree is even weaker in terms of on the job market. There are a few exceptions. Like if you work at some consulting firm and they're like, hey, we want to be able to tell our clients that our people have MBAs from Harvard, so go get an MBA from Harvard. Like there are a few of those highly tracked prestige status-based things where it might, but for the most part, no. What I've seen a lot of is students coming out with a bachelor's degree, realize that they have no idea what they want to do. They have no skills. They can't really get a job that's interesting to them. And those debt payments are due. So they go get a master's just to defer making student debt payments. I mean, so many people I've talked to who do that, which is a horrible idea. I mean, you're just adding more debt and you're just deferring the inevitable. You're not going to get any more marketable. You're not going to get any more clarity on what's valued in the real world by sitting in more classrooms. So again, unless you're in a position where financially you're not incurring any debt, where somehow it's being paid for by yourself or someone else, and you genuinely love everything about the coursework, and there's something that you just can't get by sitting in on the classes for free or tuning in online. I think the burden of proof on a master's degree to me is incredibly high. And there are very few instances where it seems to make any sense to me. And looking at it as a refuge, well, I better get one. It'll make me more employable. That is not true. That's very dangerous.
Yeah, I want to zoom in on that sentence. A lot of people my age are being pressured to do this. And I just want to say a lot of people your age are being pressured to do a lot of things. That doesn't mean that the people who are pressuring them know what they're talking about. And, you have to ask yourself, who's putting on this pressure? And what's the logic for that pressure? And do I agree with that logic? Is that logic substantiated by the things I'm observing happening in the real world? Because the people who are paying you or who will consider paying you might have a different opinion than the people who are pressuring you. So there are a lot of people in this world who are pressured to play it safe. They're pressured to do a lot of things, but they're getting very bad advice. Don't do what other people are doing just because people your age are being pressured to do it. Do things because they matter to you, because they mean something to you, and because you have evidence that those things are relevant to goals that you actually care about, not to the fears of those who care about you.
Whoo! Turn that one into a little soundbite, a little GIF, whatever the kids call it.
All right, we got an anonymous question rolling in. I would like to ask you, how do you develop self-assuredness / confidence? I find that extreme self-doubt is my knee-jerk reaction when I am in a job or social circumstance, when I don't have evidence whether I will succeed or fail. I tend to assume I will fail. I assume that I don't bring very much value at work, or I assume that others won't like me. The problem is none of this seems to be rooted in reality. I tend to feel more self-assured when there is external measurements, like a 100% on a paper in school. But when those external measurements are missing, and it is more a matter of interpretation, I feel totally unanchored and self-doubtful. I find this impacts me in the kinds of jobs I feel confident in taking. If the role has a lot of measurables, I feel more confident. But if the role is more creative, like being a therapist, design, ministry, etc., then that confidence dwindles and I feel uncomfortable applying for those roles. But the creative roles are the kinds of roles I would like to work in.
So my guess is it's not a problem of measurement. It's a problem of initiative. When you're in a situation where you're forced to do something, and then you do it and you do it well, when you do anything well, you feel proud. But if you are left to your own devices and you're not forced to do anything that's challenging, you typically won't do that many things that are challenging. And when you don't do things that are challenging, you lose self-confidence. And the longer you go not doing things that are challenging, the more self-confidence you lose, and the less you want to try challenging things, and the less self-confidence you have. And it's a very difficult spiral. And so I think I would start small. The only way to build confidence is to overcome challenges. That's it. You can't think your way to confidence. You can't read your way to confidence. You have to actually do things. And so start with the smallest possible things. If you say, I have to do one hard thing that I'm not required to do by any external force, because that's the main thing, is you haven't yet developed the muscle of doing hard things that were not imposed on you with threat of force or shame or bad grades or getting fired from someone else. And that's very hard when you've been in a school system where you do have that external reward and punishment. And in many jobs you do. And then you're in a place where you don't, which the world is increasingly going to, where you need to be internally motivated. Learning to be intrinsically motivated when you've never been given the opportunity to be in an environment to do that is incredibly hard, but you have to start small. It'll grow like compound interest. If you ever run the numbers of, if you had a penny and doubled it every day, by the end of a month, I think it'd be like $10 million, $8 million. I can't remember the exact numbers, right? The compounding effect is real. So if you say, I'm going to give myself this challenge, one difficult thing that no one else requires of me every single day. It could be very small. It could be whatever you think. That's why I like blogging every day as a challenge, a 30-day blog challenge. You got to ship a blog post every single day for 30 days. It's not that hard some days. It's really hard some days, but every day you feel a little more proud. You get another win under your belt. You gain a little confidence. By the end of it, you're like, I can do this. If it's as easy as, I'm going to go walk up and introduce myself to a stranger today. Don't care when, don't care where. It could be at the grocery store, it could be whatever. I just have to introduce myself to one stranger out of the blue, unsolicited, where it's not required. And then I do that and I go check it off somewhere. If that helps make you like seeing the physical grade motivates you, write down your challenge for that day in the morning. And before you go to bed, check that baby off. Make it something easy. Make it something doable. But do that every single day. Document it. Ideally, share it with the world. That'll help your confidence. Make that your 30-day blog challenge. I'm going to document publicly on a blog or Facebook or whatever, some small challenge that I'm doing every single day that I don't have to do. I'm going to ask somebody who's an expert on something a question, or tweet at some famous person, or whatever it might be, whatever's hard for you. Those wins will start to stack up and you will slowly build a muscle that has atrophied or has never been developed, which is the muscle of intrinsic motivation. And you will become an absolutely unstoppable, self-assured beast if you do that every day. Do it every day for 30 days, revisit, do it again for 30 days, revisit, do it again 10 more times. After a year, you will be one of the most confident people you have ever encountered.
Drop the mic. Let me supplement that with my ever so humble.
You can't say drop the mic and then add something. You just don't have to say drop the mic at all. It's like Mamba out. And then you scramble and pick up the mic again. Oh, one more thing.
Hey, one more thing before we close it out.
Hit it, TK. The mic has not been dropped yet. It has been passed.
Pass the mic. Here's what I would say. Make your preoccupation with measurement work for you by creating your own structure and combining that with the system of accountability. And Isaac basically touched on both of these things when he talked about taking initiative, setting your goals, documenting what you do, and learning out loud. The problem is not that you like to measure things. We all need something specific and concrete to aim for. You can't just wake up in the morning and be like, I want to get better. I want to do some stuff. I want to transform myself. Well, the world is specific. You have to take a specific action. What are you going to do? Take a walk, listen to a song, learn a new instrument, meet a new person. You have to pick goals. But the problem is you've been depending on other people to do that work for you, to tell you what you need to pay attention to when you read this book, to tell you what the right answers are on a test for you to memorize. And you don't have that anymore. So you've got to decide for yourself, hey, what are the things I want to achieve? Or what are the things I want to be good at? Or what are the experiences I want to create? It can be, I want to buy that new suit, and that new suit costs $200. Bam, you got your specific goal. It can be, I want to take a trip to Costa Rica. How much does that cost? You got your specific goal. It can be whatever it is you want it to be, but you got to decide what matters to you, set a specific goal, and then you can capitalize on that tendency you have to care about what other people think by saying, this is what I'm going to do. You can find one person that you know is going to give you a hard time, one person that's going to take you to task for it, or you can just blog about it every day or every week or whatever it is, but just create your own structure and make the whole measuring thing work for you.
Hey, I know we've got a whole bunch of questions still. We've got like 25 minutes before we gotta roll. And I know we're supposed to talk about an update on what's going on with Praxis and with Crash, right?
Yeah.
Should we jump in and just give a quick update?
Let's do a halftime break right here and talk about
It's like Godzilla and King Kong. I got the Crash shirt on. TK's repping Praxis. Actually, you got the limited edition Blaxis shirt, right?
All I want to say is King Kong ain't got nothing on me.
No, so since June, late May, I have been out here in San Francisco with the Crash team. There's a 5-person Crash team, and we have been out here going through an accelerator called 500 Startups. My family joined me a little bit after I did. So I'm out here with my wife and 4 kids. They're coming back pretty soon. I'll be coming back a few weeks later. We've been out here going through this accelerator program to really like immerse ourselves in the software startup scene. Gives me a chance to meet face-to-face with a lot of investors, other entrepreneurs, et cetera. It's been a pretty cool experience. We just figured we got an opportunity to do it. And we figured, you know what, let's try this. I'm not a tech guy. I'm new to the software thing. Building Praxis is very different from building a software platform. So I got a lot to learn. I'll take a shot at it. And so far it's been a good experience. I would say 2 things. One, there are a lot of great benefits of being in Silicon Valley and a lot of cool stuff happening out here, no doubt. 2, there's nothing magical in the water, and there's nothing about being out here that will automatically make you successful or more successful or let you avoid hard work. And in fact, there are, like any place where the center of a certain industry, there's always a little danger of getting caught up in doing things that are popular within that sphere, which isn't always the same as doing things that are valuable for your customers. So there's pros and cons to it. Really enjoyed the experience. Looking forward to coming home in a bit. But so that's where the Praxis or the Crash team has been out here. Praxis has been running back in Charleston. TK can give you an update of what's new with Praxis, but on the Crash front, you know, we got the sort of basic skills profile out the door. We got the Discover quiz where you can learn about what roles are a good fit for your personality. And we're just kind of testing and tweaking these things, trying to get people to use them. Tailored pitches people can send to companies to try to get them to hire them. We have Praxis participants using them. We have people coming out of other boot camps using them. We have other users using them. And then we kind of like found through a lot of trial and error this really cool approach, which we just launched July 1st, of turning your job hunt into a public campaign, like launching the startup of you the way you would launch a book or a company or a fundraising campaign on Kickstarter, and launching your profile publicly on the Crash homepage, crash.co, and rallying your network to give you upvotes, comments, job recommendations, share it with people. And it's been really cool to see in just a few weeks, people getting a lot of interview requests, feeling like they're in batches together, you know, talking with each other about launching their profiles, feeling like they're not so alone on the job hunt, that this isn't this lonely thing where you're just sending resumes into black boxes and hoping you hear back, but you're broadcasting your interest and abilities, what you're looking for. You're asking everybody in your network to help you. And then you're also doing, I call it the shotgun broadcast and the sniper. You're also doing tailored pitches to your favorite companies and asking people if they can share those as well, and running your job hunt like it's a campaign and making it something a little bit more fun and a little bit less crappy. So that's where we're at with Crash. Got a lot of stuff coming up, a lot of meetings over the next few weeks, doing like a demo day presentation out here, and trying to keep busy and trying to keep a pulse on everything that's happening with Praxis. I'm like a neglectful, I don't know, I was going to say father, but that just feels kind of wrong. But like, I'm tuned in. I know what's going on with Praxis, but there's too much happening there for me to even keep up on while I'm all heads down on Crash. So TK can give us the scoop.
Yeah, so I like to think of it as you're like the cool uncle, right? You don't have to change the diapers or, you know, any of that kind of stuff, but you get to enjoy all the fun of watching the baby grow up. You know what I mean? With you
That's
not having to
weird for you to say that I'm the cool uncle, because I got 4 kids and you're like always the cool uncle position. But yeah, I like that in the professional sense. I'm like the cool uncle of Praxis.
Yeah, I'm intimately acquainted with that metaphor, man. That's why I know. So how has the baby grown up? Oh man, so what we've been focused on with Praxis is really doubling down on what we do great, and that is helping our participants become hireable and indispensable. You know, one of the cool things about what we do is we're on the front lines of helping participants launch their careers. You know, if you're a teacher at a university or a school, you might work directly with people when they're at a stage where they're thinking about their careers, but we work with people during the process of actually applying for jobs, pitching to companies, looking for places that are a good fit. We get a lot of feedback from the businesses about how our participants can improve their performance and things along those lines. And so we've accumulated just a lot of knowledge that you couldn't get from any other context unless you're working right alongside with these participants to help them crush it at their first job. And so we've been focusing on really drilling deep with incorporating a lot of that information we've been getting from business partners to help our participants level it up in their professional lives. So one of the things that we've been doing is breaking out some pretty cool curriculum developments where we're working with some of the top content creators around the world to do major upgrades on the Praxis Bootcamp. So one example of this is Tiago Forte's course, Building a Second Brain. It's just a really awesome course on personal knowledge management, organization knowledge management, getting things done, productivity, task management. One of the main things that a lot of our business partners has been talking about that's been very valuable for them to see from Praxis participants. So partnering up with people like Tiago from Forte Labs and other content creators is really causing us to deliver an even more first-class experience, education experience for our participants. It's really going to make them great value creators.
Tekoa, is there some kind of scholarship that's being offered currently?
Between now and August 31st, there is a Homeschooler Scholarship. If you have been homeschooled, Praxis is the place for you, but you've got to apply between now and August 31st. And it is a $12,000 full ride scholarship. You don't even have to play basketball. And there's another,
but
another
you should
tuition.
play basketball. That'd be even better.
You should. Yeah, helps you develop social skills. And in addition to that, we have a tuition deferral, tuition option that we've rolled out to help more people who are really interested in Praxis, but have kind of struggled to figure out a way to pay for it. And that is something where you actually begin paying after you begin your employment. So we've got a lot of different options. Check out the homeschooling scholarship option. Check out the tuition deferral option. Check us out at discoverpraxis.com.
Hey, and I know we get this a lot, and I know we've answered it before, but I'll try to give another version of an answer, an updated version of an answer of the difference between Praxis and Crash. And the difference is becoming clearer and clearer the further that Crash defines itself. I would say this: Praxis is in the human capital building business. You will add to your human capital. You will build skills and abilities you did not previously have. You will become a more valuable member of the marketplace and have more value to offer. Crash is in the human capital allocation business. Our job is to help whatever human capital you have today, broadcast that in the best possible light to reach the most possible people in the right places so that opportunities you didn't know about that are currently valuing what you already have. It's like figuring out your current market value. We're trying to help allocate your current human capital with the opportunities that are the best match. So if you're looking to build your human capital and up your game and develop skills you don't currently have and become more marketable, more hireable, more valuable on the job market than you are now, Praxis is the absolute best program I have ever encountered for people who are non-technical or not going to become coders, but are looking for something else. And if you say, given what I know how to do today, I want to see what are the best opportunities I can find. Where is my human capital valued currently? That's what Crash is all about, helping you broadcast that signal and find those opportunities.
All right. Speaking of Crash and Praxis, we have a question from
Praxis, we call it. the greater Praxis network.
I love it, man. So here's a current Praxis participant, Gregory. Gregory says, I'm going into module 2. And as I approach placement, I'm struggling with knowing how to balance a committed relationship and the future of my career. I will be getting married to an individual I'm engaged, and therefore I want to move together. The problem is my partner might have job opportunities that push her to a different city. I know many married couples have to compromise by not taking on job opportunities to advance their career because that would force their spouse to relocate and find a new job, which is something that might not be ideal for the spouse. How should a couple tackle the fast-changing career landscape, allowing growth for each individual in their respective careers, but also maintaining a healthy relationship where the ideal is to live together?
Hey, Gregory, cool Praxis Uncle Isaac over here. I'll throw in my 2 cents, and then I would really love to hear TK because he has some really great thoughts that I would butcher if I attempted on the concept of getting down to your non-negotiables between you and your partner and really figuring out what things are and are not on the table as you come up with, what are we going to prioritize? The best opportunities, living in a certain city, whose opportunities, yours, mine, how are we going to balance it? But I would just say generally, if you do have limitations, whatever your limitations are, if you truly have identified them, that these are the non-negotiables and there are particular cities you won't go, or you have to go to a city where your wife has an opportunity, then I would say your placement process with Praxis, you're going to have to ratchet up the focus, because rather than saying, I'm going to be shopped out by Praxis and I'm going to help on the process myself as well to wherever the best opportunity is, you're going to have a tighter geographical focus, which is going to dramatically limit the number of things that you're exposed to. But it's also going to give you a chance to say, I want to go out and do new things and be really aggressive and try to actually work with Praxis to find new business partners in these cities. Hey, this is the city. Maybe there's 1 or 2 business partners there today, or 5 or 10. Let's see if we can get 20 more. And I can use my job search as an opportunity to do that, right? You may have to do some things differently. And so I would just see whatever you decide those limitations are, those non-negotiables, don't treat them as handicaps. Treat them as advantages that you find a way to lean into.
Yeah. Since Isaac, alluded to the whole non-negotiable thing, one thing I will say that gets talked about a lot when it comes to love is the willingness to compromise. And that's a part of any relationship. You have to be willing to do that. But I would say there is a flip side that gets ignored. And that is, you absolutely must have at least one thing about your life that is non-negotiable, something that you're not willing to give up for anyone, including your spouse, because it is a part of the core of who you are. It is part of the gift of a fulfilled you that you are there to give to your spouse. Whatever you do, do not equate love with being willing to give up everything and anything. I know that's what the movies teach, but love is also about being committed to being the best possible version of yourself and not burdening the person that you're with a bitter version of you who uses them as an excuse for why you're so bitter and why you're so unhappy. You never want to be the kind of person who looks at your spouse or your children and says, oh, I could have been so many things if it wasn't for you. Even if that's true,
contender.
Even if that's true, you got to own your choices, and you got to own your choices and say, I did what I did because this is what was important to me, because this path was a true reflection of my priorities. So sometimes it might feel mean to contend, to impose, to make demands, to have a difficult discussion about what you need, but there's nothing more mean than to hold someone in a prison of bitterness because you feel like it's their fault that your life didn't turn out the way you wanted it to be. That's the first thing. But here's the second thing I would say.
Better to contend than be bitter in the end, right?
Because you chose to pretend. But here's the second thing. To be honest, man, I think it might be a little early to worry about that. I think what you want to do is build a career that is anti-fragile, to build a career that isn't so vulnerable to, oh no, I'm living in Michigan, or I'm living in California, or I'm living in Iowa. At this stage in the game, as you're launching your career, you want to optimize for learning. You want to optimize for leverage. Your first couple of jobs are the real school where real learning takes place. And you can learn valuable skills no matter where you are and no matter what you do. The last thing I would do at this stage of my life is limit myself from saying yes to an offer or going after an opportunity because I don't know what I don't know that I want to do this for the rest of my life, or because it's not a direct match to whatever my dream is. Whatever you say yes to for this 6-month apprenticeship is going to be just that. It's going to be a 6-month apprenticeship. You're getting married, but don't make the mistake of treating your first couple of jobs like a marriage. That'll take a lot of the pressure off. This is an opportunity to explore, to experiment, to learn, take the best opportunity on the table based on what's most compatible with your values and what you and your spouse need together. And then you can go from there. What are you laughing about?
I just opened the question thing for the first time and I saw you've talked about the dating metaphor with looking for a job. Got any helpful breakup metaphors relating to career or just life? Well, I'll tell you one thing, whatever kind of breakup you have, professional or otherwise, don't model it after DK's breakup about 15 years ago. I told you that I would stop bringing that up.
Chill out, man. She might actually be watching.
Oh, that was a wonderful breakup. Everything was fine. It was great. You're watching. Any breakup metaphors? Yeah, I don't know. I can't think of very many like, hey, this is the way that everybody knows makes sense to break up with somebody, so you should apply that to your career. I don't really know of any like well done breakup stories, but there are well done professional exits for sure. The simplest way is just to let it be known as soon as you know that it's not a fit, whether you're the manager or you're the employee. As soon as you know it's not a fit, as soon as you're even questioning whether it's a fit, then it's probably not a fit. And you should say, I'm going to end this and I'm going to commit to be out by a certain amount of time. And as soon as you're confident in that, then you let the other person know in a very polite way. You send everybody thank yous when you leave. You wrap up all of your work. You go above and beyond to go out the door, even if they're not paying you. You answer questions afterwards and you say nice things that are true. You don't lie thereafter about the company or whatever, and be, make it as much of a win where everybody feels like it's a graduation rather than a sad breakup.
Okay. I got one
okay. We have 8 minutes. I have a hard stop.
Go.
6:30 my time. So we have 8 minutes. So let's hit the final questions. Go ahead, TK.
Thank you, TK and Isaac. I have a philosophical question. How do you know you're following the right path? Should we even aspire to follow a path?
I mean, I don't think you ever know when you're following the right path. I think you usually know when you're on the wrong path. And when you're like, I feel like I'm on the wrong path, get off that path and keep doing that until you don't feel like that. And you probably never feel like, I know I'm on the right path, but as long as you don't know you're on the wrong path, you're probably okay, headed roughly in the right direction. That's kind of how I approach it.
Yeah, look, from a moral standpoint, I'm living congruently with my value system, right? But that doesn't make things easy from a philosophical standpoint, because just because I'm not violating my code of ethics doesn't mean, I know exactly what choice to make about what I'm going to eat for breakfast or what job I'm going to make. There are a range of possibilities for how I could live my life consistently with my ethics. But for me, the right path is the path that I'm willing to own. The right path is the one that I'm willing to choose, not because I'm guaranteed that the consequences or results are going to be successful, but because this is the path that I know I need to walk in order to get the answers that are important to me. You don't need the answers before you walk the path. You walk the path because that's the one that's going to give you the answers that you need.
The willing to fail test. It's a great way to think about it.
Yeah. Caleb, is it just my end or did the stream suddenly become really slow? I don't know, man.
That's not a question. That was like a technical glitch a long time ago. Come on.
There was a full conversation.
What kind of a host are you?
What do you got up there?
Do I have? Okay, go ahead. You read them. I'm not looking at them anymore.
All right. So that was one. Okay. So this is from Ann. When you're frustrated at work, what is the best way to bring that frustration to supervisors without downplaying how frustrated you really are? Sometimes I feel like when I'm having trouble with my job, my default is to pretend the problems don't exist because it would be unprofessional to tell my managers how discouraged I am. But I also know that an open dialogue about what problems I'm having is probably necessary to solve those problems. How can I tell my boss I'm stressed, I'm overwhelmed, here's why, in a way that's both constructive and professional?
My quick thought would be, if you're just coming and saying, I feel bad or unhappy, or I don't like the way this is going, that's a suboptimal thing. Maybe that conversation has to happen and maybe that's all you can articulate and maybe it's better than nothing, but that's definitely suboptimal. If you can identify a state of affairs that is within the realm of possibility that you would like to have occurring instead of what you currently have, it would be better to come and say, hey, I would like it if when these sales calls happened or whatever it is, this could be the next few steps that would really make my life easier and I think more effective. Is there a way that we can bring that about? What would that take? And I think that comes in a more constructive way. You're coming with an idea of a preferred state, and maybe you've even attempted that, or, hey, I tried this one time and it actually worked better. Is there a way that we could try to do this versus this? I think that's always more that's preferable to, I don't like this thing, or I feel a certain way about this thing. That puts a lot of burden on the other person, and they can't tell how much of it is you've got things outside of work that you're stressed about, or it's a real problem with the company. Do you have any ideas for a solution?
Yeah. I would say the same thing. Translate what you don't like or want into a clear statement about what you do like or want, and then make that a request. So if I'm in the office with Isaac and I say, hey man, it's hot, what's he supposed to do with that? I guess he could take responsibility for knowing what I want and say, okay, want me to change the, the air, or I can just say,
some
hey,
like it hot and some, sorry.
He'll start doing that. Or I can just say, hey, can we turn the air up? Okay. The second thing I would say is when you make a request, just make the request. Think about why you would like the request, but don't make the request in a defensive manner. Don't say, hey, because I feel like I'm dying in here, can we turn the air on? Or don't say like, hey, because I feel like I've been a good worker and I deserve some respect around here, can we get the air on? When you ask questions, treat people with good faith as if it's possible that they'll actually care about cooperating or helping you out. And don't go into any reasons or stories unless you need them. I think that just raises the odds of you getting what you want.
Yeah. I think we can get in a couple rapid fire ones real quick.
K through 12 compulsory schooling still exists 50 to 100 years from now. That's from Joel.
I don't think so.
I think there will always be people who want a king, and people who want a king will always get one. You talk a lot about figuring out what to do with your life. I just assume, by the way, that people know exactly what my answer was from that. You talk a lot about figuring out what to do with your life when you get to the college age. What advice would you give to someone homeschooling kids in the 12 to 15-year-old range?
Yeah, TK, on that previous question, you always want to answer predictions in a way that makes you look right no matter what happens. Man, that's a great question. What advice about kids in the, homeschooling or not in the 12 to 15-year-old range in terms of getting, thinking about what they want to do? I have a 14-year-old, so I do not feel like I am mastering this artfully and gracefully by any stretch of the imagination. But I think the thing that I strive to do and that I think makes the most sense is just the more exposure to the real world, to the marketplace, the better. Things that you're interested in, being around people who do those things, seeing people who do it for a living, working for free, job shadowing, getting a job, monetizing your interests if you can. If you like drawing, see if you can get a friend to let you illustrate something for them for $5 to see what it's like to earn money off of those things. The more you can be exposed to that, so you don't have this world of safe, protected, child, fake, artificial world, and then all of a sudden dropped off into the highway of careers, and now I have to do something that people are willing to pay me for. And you see this as this antagonism, and you become some communist hippie who thinks work is an oppressive thing from monocled monopolists or something. Like, that's a horrible life. Like, communists are not happy people. You don't want that, right? So the sooner you can be exposed to the wonderful, glorious, multifaceted world of commerce and integrate that with life and your passions and your interests and understand how there's an interplay, and you can do projects for pay and jobs and all this stuff, and they don't have to compete with the things that you care about, and you can find ways to tie them together. Even if you're doing grunt work, get a job selling, bagging groceries so you can earn money to buy the art supplies that you want. Like, the more you can expose your kids to those things earlier, I think the better, and the more options they'll have and the more valuable they'll be and the more confident they'll be. At least that's my hope. And I'm trying to do that with my own kids. And I actually don't think that I'm doing a very good job at that right now, but that's something that I strive to.
Yeah, so I'm going to double down on Isaac's earlier answer to someone who's older than that about curiosity, creating space for the exploration of curiosity. I would say that most children in that age range are heavily burdened with all sorts of things they are required to do by school or by authority figures in their lives. And this is even true with people who are in homeschool, right? They have this curriculum that's decided for them.
Yeah, they got to churn butter. They got to play concertos on the violin. They got to deliver like babies all the time. Their siblings are being born left and right, raise barns. I mean, I grew up homeschooled. I know the struggle.
Seriously. And the most valuable thing about education is not completing the assignment. It's being the person who picks the assignment, because that's what actually mirrors adult life. In adult life, you don't read the book that someone assigns. You figure out what's the book that needs to be read in order to solve your particular problem, right? So give as much room as you can for them to create their own curriculum, for them to decide what their own activities will be, so that they can cultivate that self-knowledge that comes from that. Because as they get older, the pressure of providing for themselves is going to kind of compromise the amount of time they'll have to do that. Now is the time. Secondly, I would say responsibility is the ultimate intelligence enhancer. You don't have to give them responsibility, but do not artificially insulate them from responsibility. If you allow them the opportunity to choose their own goals and activities, there will be responsibilities inherent in that. Resist the temptation to feel so much pity for them that you save them from the maturity and growth that's going to come from having to fight through their own problems.
Ding, 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 ding. Office Hours season finale is now over. The winner by split decision, according to the votes, 2-1, Isaac Michael Morehead. The people's champ and the real champ. Undisputed.
Hey, thanks everybody for hanging out with us, following us all season, supporting us, all the awesome comments on Twitter, the email, showing us the love.
This is not an Oscar speech. Thanks to my mom and our other 3 listeners,
Thanks to Mama Morehouse.
I got to stop making that joke, man. We're climbing up the rankings. Hey, go listen to the back episodes. Get ready. We'll have season 4 coming at you sometime. Had a blast. Peace out.
Much love.